Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming into the pod. Got a great show today. It's June, so let's talk Bears football, baby. Let's bring in our co-host here. He's my man. He is CHGO's very own, Fox 32's very own, West End Golf Course's very own. It is Corey Wootton. What's up, Corey?
Hey, what's going on, my man? Summertime, a lot of golf. Football season coming around the corner, so two of my favorite times of the year right now.
Yeah, two of my favorite times of the year, the U.S. Championship here in L.A. over the past weekend while people were gagging away the lead in the second half of that tourney. I'm sure a lot of people were watching it over at West End Golf Course. Let's bring in our guest for today. We got a Hall of Famer with us today right here. He is longtime Chicago Sun-Times sports reporter, a man also known for a little show called Sports Writers on TV that I used to watch as a kid. We have two Northwestern alumni here. So what happens when two Northwestern alumni and a Columbia College Chicago guy walk into a bar? We do a show. It's Rick Telander. What's up, Rick?
How you doing, George? Hi, Corey. I'm doing great.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show, Rick. If you don't mind, we're going to talk a little Bears football, but I did want to kind of start a little bit with Sports Writers on the TV, if you don't mind. A show that was not just seminal for me, but as we look at the landscape of TV today, it turns out that it was a pretty good idea. So are you able to kind of compare and contrast what you were doing at that time and now as you see the formatting of TV today of people sitting around a table, talking sports, debating topics? I mean, you guys were at the forefront of that. So does it blow your mind a little bit that you were onto something, maybe just a little bit back in that day?
Well, looking back on it, it seems like it wasn't genius. It's just like, why don't we do this? There have been years and years, decades, hundreds of years, maybe even, where sports writers, whenever sports writing began, where they were considered, you write, we don't see you, we don't hear from you, that's all. We have people to be on TV. We got, the pretty boys and pretty girls and everybody with their makeup and that, and they'll do whatever they have to do. You guys stay in the background. And then Bill Gleason, Bill Joust, Ben Bentley, and the producer, John Roach, who was kind of he and Gleason were like the genius behind it, determined why not have people who were actually at the games, who actually know the athletes, who actually talk to these people, who write about it. They can speak. They're not mute. Why don't we have them talk about it instead of having talking heads talk about it? Let's have actual people who are involved in the games do it. And those guys, they were old boys when they started. Our first show was, believe it or not, it was late December 1985, right before the Bears would win that first Super Bowl. That kind of propelled us into the future. But Gleason and Joust and those guys seemed like, Gleason with a cigar in his mouth, old-fashioned. They were very progressive in that if he were around now, they would have something new on the internet. I don't know what it would be, but they had already done this on radio, the sports writers on radio, on WGN. And that was fabulous, too. Again, why not have sports writers talking? So they did it. And every time I see a TV show now, sports talk show, where there's more than one or two people, like you two guys talking. But if there's a round table, it springs from the sports writers on TV, including the sports reporters on TV, which was Dick Schaap and ESPN in New York, all those guys. I did that for a while after this, the sports writers. But those guys, man, they changed the landscape of sports talk. They absolutely did.
Yeah, and to follow up on that just really quick, it went beyond sports too as well. I mean, you can find some of these things on YouTube today, but you guys talked about a lot of topical issues that went beyond the realm of sports. And one of my favorite ones, if you have any anecdotal story behind it, my favorite was when you guys had Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins on there, who for me was this mythic rock god like figure. And you put these musicians up on a pedestal, as we did in the early 90s, these mythical figures. And then he sits down and then he talks to you about the Cubs. You know what I mean? And he talks about Sean Dunston. I mean, what was that experience like? That was kind of a cool move, too.
Billy is a Cubs nut. And, now he's a wrestling nut. And he lives not too far from here in Highland Park. He's got this Madame Zuzu's tea house, and sometimes he'll play there. He did a big benefit after the terrible shooting last July 4th in Highland Park. But Billy came on, and I remember we were shooting a breeze. He's pretty tall. He used to play some basketball.
Center, I was going to say, yeah.
He's about 6'2.5", maybe, kind of skinny. He always wears that wrapped, scarf or whatever. He's got his look. Yeah. But he's very knowledgeable about the Cubs. And I brought my guitar down that day. I remember I said, we got to sing. What do we sing? Go Cubs Go. I think we did. Or Take Me Out to the Ball Game. Something. We had Pat Sajak on. God, we had Dennis Farina on. You remember him?
Great Chicago actor. Yeah.
Top movies. And one anecdote, I got to tell you this. He did Crime Story, was a series on TV, and it took place in Vegas. And he was a cop, and it was a bad guy. I think his name is Ted Levine, who played the killer in
Buffalo Bill. Right.
Yeah, Buffalo Bill and Silence of the Lambs. Anyway, very noticeable guy. And Farina's always chasing him, and he finally gets him, and he just beats the hell out of him with a coat rack in a store, in a diner or whatever. And as the cops are coming in, he's an undercover cop or whatever. He looks at him and he says, "Book this puke." And I remember I said to Dennis, I reminded him of that, and he says, "Kind of like Shakespeare, wasn't it?"
The great mustache, man. He was the carbon copy. If you could make like a Chicagoan in a lab, Dennis Farina would be pretty close to that. Thank you so much for just talking about that, because that was just such a huge part of my life growing up. And as you see now, it doesn't matter what sports channel you turn on now we have that iteration in some sort of form prevalent throughout all of our media. Let's hop over to the Chicago Bears here on BLEAV in Bears with Chicago Sun-Times Rick Telander. Corey, my man, I'm going to give you first dibs here of the conversation that we're going to start about the Chicago Bears. We're still a month away from training camp, but man, there's a lot of excitement going into a 3-14, which feels a little bit different and a little bit fresh, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, man, I'm excited about this. I'm excited to see where the offense is going to be, because they surrounded Justin Field with all the tools, right? They got the revamped offensive line. We got a wide receiver in DJ Moore, so we have a lot of weapons there. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do this year.
Yeah, and look, I think this all centers around what else in Chicago than the quarterback, Rick. So, for you personally, I think everyone has a different gauge, a different gradient level of how we're looking at this. But for you, what does the next step for Justin Fields look like for you personally this year?
Well, obviously the quarterback is everything in the NFL. The way the rules have changed, the way the pass blocking, the way, defensive backs, what you can and can't do to a receiver going down the field. So if you can pass well, if you got a good passing attack, the old nonsense about, well, we have to establish a run to set up the pass. Well, no, you don't. It's nice if you got it. And Justin Fields is a great runner. We got to remember that. I mean, the guy was on pace to set the NFL record for rushing yards by a quarterback. But you can also get, annihilated doing that. It's very dangerous to run. And he's a big guy, but you have guys like Corey coming after you. You don't want that. Oh, by the way, before I go any further, I have to mention, the highlight of Corey's career was not in the NFL. It was against Iowa in Iowa City. And he annihilated, almost decapitated the quarterback, fumbled, safety in the end zone, recovered for a Northwestern touchdown. That's it. You should have just quit football right after that.
And done with it. Retire right there.
I'm sure you remember that.
Oh, I do. I remember their pink locker rooms too. That was something that always, people don't know that. They have pink locker rooms because it's a whole mental thing. They try to get you in a softer mindset because pink is a softer color. I promise you. We had great success there.
Yeah. Hayden Fry was a psychology major or something, and he'd learned that pink makes you weak. So he did that. That's really devious, and I'm glad you got the quarterback for that, for making you suffer through that pink. Anyway, back to the Bears and the sorry, but
no, it's we're going to pump in Enya into the locker room too as well while we're at it. A little sail away
pink.
And just
pink. Come on, pink.
So be it.
The Bears, the quarterback Justin Fields and the tools around him, but as we all know, what a quarterback wants more than anything, maybe as much or if not more than great receivers, is an offensive line that he can trust, one that can protect him. And the Bears haven't. I mean, I don't know how that's going to flesh out. We never really know about offensive linemen, how good they are. The only way you can tell is when they make mistakes. And they make a mistake, they say, well, he's not very good. The quarterback comes out the field with his pants clean, and hasn't been sacked a bunch of times, then it's a good line. If there's holes for the running back, it's a good line. So the Bears have not gone all in on an offensive line, I hope. that as it establishes, through training camp and that it will come together. They got DJ Moore as a wide receiver. I mean, that's a number one receiver right there. They got these other guys, 3-14 that's the most games the Bears have ever lost in a season. Of course, they played 17 games, but still, it's terrible. Terrible. Their offense at the start of last year was so bad, it was almost like a joke. So I think that Justin Fields, the hope is that he will see what this offense can be, and he'll just blossom like, oh my God, I don't have to run for my life. I don't have to, rush for over 100 yards a game. I have wide receivers and tight ends who will catch these balls and catch the passes and go for extra yards. All comes together, So that's a hope. I think that's every Bears fan's hope this year.
Yeah, and I think this is the most weapons the Bears have had in a while. You look at from DJ Moore. Now, all of a sudden, they were trying to get Chase Claypool to be a number one. He's not really a number one. He's probably a 2 or a 3. Darnell Mooney, it takes the pressure off him. You look at when Allen Robinson was here, he went over 1,000 because all the attention was on Allen Robinson. And then Cole Kmet, another year in this system, could really be a viable red zone threat. And then Robert Tonyan from Green Bay as well. So the receiving core with the tight ends, it's a pretty good situation. The running back room is a great situation there. So I'm really excited to see because Roschon Johnson, I feel like he hasn't even scratched the surface of what he can be because he was behind Bijan Robinson at Texas, who's arguably been one of the best running back prospects in years to come. So I'm really looking forward to it. The only question mark for me is Braxton Jones. Did he get stronger this offseason? Because when I looked at him, I'm like, here's a guy that has great feet, right? Never got beat around the edge. But what did he struggle against? The bull rush. And I said this, Joey, he reminds me a lot of David Bakhtiari from Green Bay. I played against him his rookie year. Really struggled against power. I could give him the long arm and all that. And then next year, he really worked on his anchor and his strength, and it was night and day. And then he played at a Pro Bowl level. So if Braxton Jones can do that, he could really be that left tackle of the future. You got Darnell Wright, who in my opinion was one of the best pass protectors coming out of this draft. Will Anderson raved about him. He said he's the best guy I've went against my whole college career. So I think that's telling about Darnell Wright. So if everything could work together, you got 2 tackles that are here for years to come. You got 2 guards as well, and they're going to try to figure out that center position. But I think it's a pretty good situation if everybody plays up to par.
Yeah, not to push it too far down the road, too, as well as who's the backup to Braxton Jones, right? I know that we talk about improvements on each line, a lot of versatility, but at left tackle, who would step into that spot if he did have to possibly miss some time?
Darnell Wright, I guess, because he's done it he has the feet. I think he has left tackle feet playing on the right side, so he could potentially, but obviously you want to keep him at the right side if you can.
Yeah, and Rick, I think the reason why we try to frame it for that question for you is I think Bears fans have really, really high expectations, and I just want to make sure that, especially on this show, that they're not too misplaced. Like we do a lot of talk on BLEAV in Bears of, the Chicago Bears, I think they were last in the NFL last year in pass attempts per game, about 18, 19 per game. But at the same time, they had one of the best running attacks in the game. Rick, I do think that is still probably a formula for success in Chicago, right? For Justin Fields to throw the ball over 30 times a game, that just doesn't seem maybe like the model that he plays or the style that he plays in. And we make comparisons to Cam Newton every once in a while with Justin Fields, but do you still kind of envision a more balanced attack with the Chicago Bears offense heading into next season?
Yeah, I think a balanced attack is good unless you happen to have one of these freakishly good quarterbacks. If you do, if you happen to have, Aaron Rodgers, you develop into. Remember, Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years. Jordan Love sat all this time. Justin Fields maybe is the equivalent of having running for your life. Yeah, the Bears had good rushing attack because they just had no faith in their offense. So a lot of things can happen mentally if your team, if it comes together. And you find that balance, and hopefully the offensive coordinator will figure out how much Justin Fields should run a handoff, how much he should pass. You don't want to. There's nothing worse than having a quarterback throw more than he should. It's like, we're throwing the ball because it's the NFL, and you got to pass. That's not good. You want to do it effectively. Corey brought up earlier Tonyan and Kmet. I thought that Kmet coming out of Notre Dame had the chance to be one of those really good tight ends, really good, like Kansas City or Tanyan was pretty good. Maybe that's Aaron Rodgers. It makes everybody good up there, did make everybody good up there. But Kmet seemed to have that skill, the kind of basketball skills, the good hands. He's big. Sometimes in your, fourth, fifth year, is he a fourth year guy, third, fourth, fifth?
It's going to be his fourth year. Yeah.
Fourth year.
Yep.
You can develop. They're still young. And you think about how, you yourself or I or anybody was at age 25, 26, you still can be developing strength and still developing your game. I think there's been studies that shown in basketball, premier players improve all the way up to about age 27, and then they can hit a plateau. And then there's a point like at age 31 where they definitely start to decline. So I think it's probably somewhat similar in football. A lot of these Bears could be hitting that peak moment, including Justin Fields, where we'll get to see something that wasn't there last year. I don't know. The other thing is we get our hopes up, maybe hopefully not too high, because don't forget, the Vikings and the Packers and the Lions, everybody think for once is a really good team. The Lions are one of those snake bit, NFL teams like the Browns. Actually, the two teams I would love more than anything to play each other in the Super Bowl, because one of them would have to win, which would be awesome. But I don't know. The Bears better not get cocky, because I think a lot of prognosticators still have them finishing like fourth in their own division.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Bears this year is, we have all the weapons there, but really rely on the running game. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. That's going to set up everything. If you can get that run game going, it really keeps the defensive line off balance. Then you can work the play action, you can work screens and draws, and then everything comes. And then all of a sudden you can open up the passing package. That's what I'm hoping, that they don't just try to guns a-blazing, throwing the ball down the field early and often, really establish that run. And then you'll be able to do what you want to do, because you look at how they ran the football last year. Now, all of a sudden, we got these weapons and everything will open up downfield.
Yeah, I think that's a big belief system here on BLEAV in Bears, is that I think we get obsessed with statistics. I know Bears fans do. And I just think Justin Fields doesn't have to throw for 4,000 yards next year for it to be a wild success of a season. And just to roll back to Cole Kmet very quick, they've been releasing a lot of statistics about Cole Kmet's career. And in the beginning of his career, he was a positive player in zone coverage. He really struggled in man. But last year, he actually was a positive player in man coverage, strictly in play action. So, Corey, what you're talking about, when you're running the football, when you're dialing up looks that make Cole Kmet all of a sudden a threat, then all of a sudden you see the numbers of Cole Kmet that you were hoping for when he first got drafted. So it all works in concert with each other. But I just don't think that has to mean Justin Fields throws for 40 TDs and 4,000. I know all Bears fans want that, right? But it could still, those stats can look a little more modest, and it still can lead a little bit to winning football. We're talking here with BLEAV in Bears, the Chicago Sun-Times, Rick Telander. For both of you guys, Rick, if you'd like to go first on this one, I want to move it over to General Manager Ryan Poles. So obviously, last year was a bit of a punt year. A lot of dead money, trade some players. Do what you can, play the game, you get the number one pick, you make a trade. Now this season, offseason, obviously, they've made some more moves. They put some money allocated into the defense and to some different players. So with Ryan Poles constructing this roster, living in this building the right way mode, what do you think his biggest blind spot is right now with this roster heading into training camp?
Oh, man, the hardest part probably is a football team really does need 22 good players. It's not like basketball. You can have 3, great players and put other guys around them. Whatever your weakness is, the other team's going to exploit it, and they'll find out what it is. It might be defense. You worry about, when they got rid of Roquan Smith, who, is a Pro Bowl middle linebacker and probably will be for years to come. That set them back. I guess they had to do it. So you try to build back to get a defense that's worthy of the offense. I mean, they put a lot of effort into the offense, from the offensive line, the wide receivers, running back, and of course they got Justin Fields. Getting rid of that first pick, it'll be very interesting to see how the quarterbacks they could have taken this year didn't, because they decided they didn't need them. But they also God, it goes back to a few years ago when Ryan Pace. Oh my God! I mean, you hate to even think about it. The Bears could almost be like the Kansas City Chiefs had they. Well, we can't talk about that. I'm sorry.
You're talking about. I was gonna say we should have taken Solomon Thomas, right? Solomon Thomas. If we had just taken him.
Yeah, Solomon Thomas, right? Whoever he is. No, and you asked about the blind spot for Poles. I'm really not sure. This will be his year, and we probably won't find it out till the season. And I like what he's doing. We like it when your team is bad. You can only go up. I mean, the Bears aren't going to lose 15 games next season, so everything's going to look like an improvement. And I'm not sure when we'll be able to see that. Nobody's going to say anything negative. Everybody's going to say, well, so-and-so's a better leader, and I've developed this, and my speed is better, and I'm stronger. And we don't know. That's how the NFL is. You don't badmouth. You really do have confidence. You really do believe you're better. And the one thing I think with, the new change in president and with Poles and all this talk about going to Arlington Heights, a new stadium, the Bears are in the news all the time. And I think that has to help. If I remember the Bears right now, that would make me feel good. It'd be like, we're a big deal. It's not like you're some lousy team and nobody's talking about you. I mean, Corey, you were a player. Didn't it make you feel good when people were talking up your team?
Oh yeah. It feels great, but with that becomes great expectations, right? It's kind of better a little bit where they don't talk about you, and then all of a sudden you go above what you think, right? Surprise people. But to answer this question, I think the defensive end position, I think that's going to be the weak spot of the team. I'm looking at it right now. DeMarcus Walker, that's one guy that comes to mind. He had 7 sacks last year, but most of them were from the 3 technique on pass rush situations. So he projects to a left end. I think he'll slide in on pass rush situations. But other than him, I'm kind of trying to figure out who's going to be the next guy to step up. So I think the defensive end position for me, and I wouldn't be surprised if they added a veteran, guy with some experience that could come in and fill one of those roles at defensive end.
Well, Corey, quick follow-up. I mean, this is clearance aisle time. You know what I mean? For shopping for pass rushers. Frank Clark off the board, Leonard Floyd off the board. Who's left out there? Who would you like to see? I mean, would a Robert Quinn reunion make any sense? Jadeveon Clowney, is there anybody out there that can actually maybe help them just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a Jadeveon Clowney if the money made sense to have him play right end and see where it goes. Is Yannick Ngakoue, is he still available?
Still out there.
Okay, I wouldn't mind him in a pass rush situation only, like strictly just nickel. He's averaged about 7.5 a year throughout his whole career. I know he's not going to give you much in the run game, but, in that rush package, I wouldn't mind that. But the one thing is I think the defensive line is going to stop the run. They've added some defensive tackles, Andrew Billings, Javon Dexter. So they've kind of solidified, in the run stopping. But now we got to see where the pass rush is going to come. Are they going to dial up some blitz packages with some of the talented linebackers at Edmonds and Edwards? But the thing is, the Tampa 2 really flourishes when you have a front 4 that can generate pressure independently. So I just don't know if we're going to get that pressure. So, next year we'll be able to stack up some of those defensive ends. But I think this year there's probably going to be a lot of blitzing involved in some of those pass rush situations.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Gordon, maybe some linebacker blitzes try and be deceptive. I mean, if they stop the run, Corey, a little bit better than they did last year, you do think that it gives them a little bit better shot. Just maybe getting off the football field and helping the team out. Just a couple more here. Rick, you touched on it a little bit. I would just love to hear your thoughts. You wrote a really great article very recently about Arlington Heights and let the bidding begin. Let the leverage and this is all of a sudden this bleeds over from sports into more of the business side of the business, and it can get a little confusing. So tell us, are you excited for the Waukegan Bears?
They keep looking at sites that get farther and farther. I'm thinking, why not, somewhere just across the river in Iowa?
Let's go for it. Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, but give 2,000 acres, they can build, 15 flags over America. It really is the kind of thing where a lot of this is posturing. guaranteed and leveraging. And the thing about the NFL, it is a cartel, meaning that it's established a group of businesses. Nobody else can get in. It fixes prices. It limits its product, and it demands all sorts of services that nobody else can get into their particular business. Chicago, in one of those columns, I mentioned that the country, the United States, has grown by 45 million citizens, since the last expansion team came along. Well, if this were England or Europe and it was a soccer team, there'd be 30 new soccer teams, but it's not even one new NFL team. So the Bears they got the negotiating power that only you can have if you are a member of something like a cartel, which is like, monopoly sort of. And it's legal. It's weird. It's a very weird arrangement that's been established for the NFL. So if you don't want the Bears, if you don't give them what they want, well, they'll take their ball and go home. They might end up back in Chicago. There's lots of talk about the old steel mill down on the far south side on the shore, Lake Michigan, but there's not good transportation there. To remodel Soldier Field, I mean, I've been in that place a million times, and you just can't keep adding little more lipstick on the pig. I mean, it's too small. They never should have put what they put in there inside of those colonnades. It didn't fit. Could have moved the colonnades one way or the other, done something. But now to dome it would be really weird. It's the smallest stadium in the NFL. They need a new one. You've seen all the new ones that they built in Las Vegas, Santa Clara, all the bells and whistles, like the one down in Texas, the Cowboys have. Hell, the Jumbotron's bigger than Soldier Field. I'm not saying Chicago has to be like, this high-tech place, but it's one thing to be in the 1950s and at least move ahead into the 21st century. My gut feeling is eventually, and it won't be for years, but they will do the Arlington Heights thing. I really feel that. The city of Chicago is strapped for money, and if the Bears want all these concessions, be hard-pressed on a new mayor like Brandon Johnson to just say, here it is. So we keep following this. Naperville, Arlington Heights, Waukegan, Chicago, multiple places in Chicago. I'm from Peoria. I mean, I don't know. Right there by
Oswego. It's open for business. Corey, real quick, from the player's perspective, what would it, when we're talking new stadium, new amenities, stuff like that, what is the most important to you? A neutral temperature, like neutral game condition temperature, the grass, the locker room amenities, or am I missing something? What would be most important to you?
So I think the biggest thing is when you're talking about from a defensive lineman's perspective, right? You're talking about the acoustics, right? For when you got to get the crowd noise up, something like similar to the 12th man, where it's really hard for the opposing offenses to get the snap count. But I think the biggest thing is field surface. Soldier Field for so long has been arguably one of the worst playing surfaces. We got used to it, but it's not very good. But if it would feel weird in the suburbs, right? Like Chicago, it's in the city, Soldier Field. Like I know it's going to be hard to renovate or reconstruct it. So I think it's probably going to go to the burbs. But, somebody that played there, it's just something about being downtown, right on the lake there. It's like, oh, I'm going to Chicago Bears game. I'm going to the city. It would kind of feel weird in Arlington Heights. It really would, to be honest with you. But
yeah, you're right, Corey. It would be very weird. To me, yes, the grass surface is the most important thing, and not being 40 below zero or sleet, something like that. But if the turf is okay, that's good. But the thing about an NFL stadium, it's really only used 10 times a year. The rest of the time, it just sits there and you look at it. Now, they use Soldier Field for concerts, use it for, soccer games. They've used it for numerous things, maybe dog shows. I don't know. You can have big trucks. You can do all kinds of things there. But it really is just like something that just sits there. And if the players don't practice in the stadium, I know at Arrowhead, the Chiefs always practice right next to, the stadium. Now, I don't know if they ever practice in it, but they're right there. Other places are like that, too.
Like the Giants, too, yeah.
Yeah, the Giants. And the Bears have always practiced miles and miles away, never even close. Lake Forest is, 25, 30 miles from down there. So there's kind of a disconnect there. And as a city, as a taxpayer, people have to think, what are we getting for this? And studies have shown over and over again that citizens just get ripped off over stadiums. They just do. The money doesn't come in, all these jobs, quote jobs and all this. Most of it is churn that would have been there anyway. And then again, it'd be like 8, even with preseason games, at most 10 Sundays that the Bears would be there. And then people leave quite often. They go somewhere else. So it's a big deal. I know for the city, nothing better than being right down there. That just looking at the skyline and all that stuff. But if I were a Bears executive, if I were Kevin Warren, president, or I don't know if Poles has any say in it, Scott Hagel, the other people there, George McCaskey, for one time in our history, just to start without putting something together, kind of jury rigging something, just doing it. This is our stadium. Soldier Field was never built for the Bears. The Bears, when I was a little kid, I went to Wrigley Field to watch the Bears. Soldier Field was a big, wide open track stadium. So my thought is to have one stadium built just for me, the way I want it, with all the bells and whistles forever and ever. I would do it. Yeah, I know Arlington Heights is not Chicago. It would be unfortunate, but that's what I would do, unless Chicago can come up with some. I don't know how they do it.
So are you in favor of a dome?
Yes, a retractable dome. Absolutely. Just so you can have a Super Bowl, things like that. I've been to Super Bowls in Minneapolis and in Detroit. Come on. If Detroit can have a Super Bowl, so can Chicago. And that's because they had domes.
Yeah. The only reason why I'm against it is it's such a home field advantage when you're outside in the cold. And like 2010, we played the Seahawks, right? It was snowing. It was maybe 10 degrees out, and they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be there. They didn't want to play. They hit the ground. They were getting up slow. So I feel like it is a home field advantage to play at Soldier Field or somewhere in Chicago where the wind is whipping, the weather's cold. We played the Cowboys in 2013 where it was -10. They didn't want to be there. I hit Jason Witten. He came across and blocked me. He's like, "Oh man, I didn't want to be here." So I think it is a competitive advantage when it comes down to playoff time. To be in a cold weather place, you're like, "Oh, we're built for this." Yeah. And we're going to grind it out, and we're going to win this game. So
the Bears have a lot of guys from the South, though. And listen, you might have to play Buffalo in January in Chicago, play the Bills. They're used to cold weather, too. Yep. That's an interesting concept. The more miserable you make the place, the better it is for the Bears.
Yeah, it's like in the movie Major League, right? Or like, you know what I mean? Mess with their flights.
You playing the Saints, and when it comes time to playoff, and they're used to playing in that dome. It's nice.
Yeah, they're all a bunch of pansies, all those guys indoors. There's air conditioning, let's face it. But that is true. And I just think of some of those games. I used to love watching the snowfall, like at Denver. When there's a game, because Denver has a weather system. It comes over the mountains. It might not last, but they'll get a blizzard. I don't know if you ever played there in a blizzard that would last maybe an hour. Mm-hmm. Were you ever there, Corey?
So I was there in 2011 with Tim Tebow when he was the quarterback there. We played him early in the season, so it wasn't when it was snowing, but
it wasn't too bad. I'm trying to think what, if every team has a dome stadium, the ones who don't, it really does make a difference. It makes a difference in how you plan your offense, who you want as a quarterback, who you want as your receivers, blockers, everything, and even on defense. Yeah. Because if you figure you got 3 games where the weather's going to be miserable, cold, and these guys come in like the Dolphins come in or the Raiders, and they have no idea what cold weather is, and they're like, oh, geez, wrapping themselves. They put plastic on and Vaseline and everything. That can be a factor. Back in the day, they didn't have these heated seats and big fans blowing. You look back at that Ice Bowl game in Green Bay and Dallas. I mean, they were just sitting on the sidelines freezing. Yeah. Now you go over there and get warm, take your coat off, and
you don't make them like they used to.
I was gonna say the mortality rate, like everyone survived that game. It's incredible.
But the one thing about a dome too, you got to think about it now from the injury standpoint, right? Field turf, there's more injuries that usually occur from that. So from that standpoint, the studies have shown that, right? Field turf, there's more likely to have, a non-contact ACL or potentially an Achilles just because your foot, gets caught in the ground. So that's one thing that you're keeping in mind when it comes to player safety. Obviously, I think guys really love turf surfaces because they're faster. But I think when guys are thinking about, okay, the correlation between that, maybe let me play in a place that has a grass field, if I'm thinking about the future and longevity of my career.
Yeah, because, out here in SoFi, all the scuttlebutt is how much the players hate the turf there. You have this beautiful new stadium. Again, TVs as wide as the biggest giant whale you've ever seen in your life. You don't miss a thing. The amenities are fantastic. But Cooper Kupp is like, you are shortening my career with the type of turf you have on there, and we need to play on natural grass.
What is the turf there at SoFi?
So I think it's the field turf that's there. Like it's a
why don't they have grass of all places?
Yeah.
And that's the irony, right? Is you spend all of this money, and then when you ask players like former Bear Corey Wootton, what's most important to you, and you go the playing surface, and then you see what happens at Soldier Field in the Chicago Park District. It's just funny, right? What we spend our money on when this is probably what the players talk about the most is making the most safe or playable playing surface that you possibly can. One final question for you, Rick Telander here of the Chicago Sun-Times. I wanted to have a fun one with you. As you mentioned previously on the pod, you've been doing this for 27 years as a columnist for the Chicago Sun-Times. You've probably have heard it all from Chicago sports fans. I may phrase this incorrectly, which is humiliating in front of a wordsmith. But what is the biggest Chicago sports fan crutch that you feel like just never goes away? What is the one big cliche? And I'm going to give you 3 options here. What is the one that you hear the most? The man goes, man, we'll never let this go. Chicago sports fan talking about the backup quarterback. Chicago sports fan going up to you and saying, we need to trade X player for prospects. Or Chicago sports fan coming up to you and telling one of the owners needs to sell the team / the owner is cheap. Which one has lived the longest, has stood the test of time that you still?
Oh my God, those are like 3 questions that are like impossible to answer. Those are the best. It's like random throwing coins. It's like 33%, 32%, and 34% on which one I get the most. But the trade one is a no-brainer. That's always trade this guy. But I would say the one that sticks the most is, and the second, the backup quarterback is great. But the owner is cheap. They're cheap. They got to sell. And you hear that constantly. And maybe it's more constant in Chicago because the teams have been owned by the same owners for so long. I mean, Reinsdorf's been there forever. The McCaskies go back to the start of the NFL.
Wirtz family.
The Blackhawks. I mean, it really is amazing, the tradition in Chicago. It's different from other places where corporations own the teams or just some gazillionaire who just, made his money in the .com market and buys a team. You see that all over the place, not in Chicago. So I would say they're cheap. The owner's cheap. You can go, you want to buy everybody, especially in baseball. If we had this guy, he's on the free market, sure, he's $400 million for 5 years. We'll win the World Series if we get it. Yeah, I'll go with that. Okay?
Yeah, get ready. Ohtani, right? Ohtani coming.
Oh, yeah, just Ohtani. He'll solve everything. We need him. He'll be our best pitcher, our best hitter. He'll do TV commercials. He'll sell shoes. Just get him. Yeah, get him. Sure.
There we go. I got one question. It's about Northwestern. So what is your all-time favorite memory when it comes to you playing at Northwestern? Talk about anything, a game, a particular play. What's your all-time favorite memory at Northwestern?
I think my all-time favorite, it's funny how I only remember bad things. I mean, that's what comes to my mind. As a defensive back, just bad things. It's awful. Never remember anything good. But my favorite moments was watching my teammate, Mike Adamle, run for 317 yards against Wisconsin. And I'm on defense. I'm on the bench watching him. And it was just, he won the game for us. It was magnificent. We didn't even need anybody else on the field. It was astounding. I do believe It's a fact. He ran the same play, the exact same, whatever was off tackle, 8 or 9 times in a row. Alex Agassi, our coach, just called it again and again and again until it led to a touchdown. And we're watching this like, damn, that was a great. I love that.
Yeah, they can't stop it, right?
No,
keep going,
man.
just keep going.
Here it is, coming right here in this hole.
Yeah.
Here it is. Put everybody there. We're still going to run it. And they couldn't stop him. Yeah, it was great. I remember that. Well,
that's awesome. Mike is a great guy, and it's unfortunate, what's happened to him. But I've met him plenty of times, from when I first got drafted to the Bears and in college. Really great stand-up guy, and my thoughts and prayers with him, as he's going through this. But unbelievable person.
Yeah, I just saw him a week ago, and God love him. He's doing everything he can. He is just the strongest, most decent person who's really suffering now. But that's why those memories I have of him are even stronger and more powerful.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. It makes you put things in perspective, when you think you have something bad and things like that. But I'm just hoping, I'm glad that they're continuing to study more and more about the brain so they can make the game safer for people, so this doesn't happen. And it's a common theme with guys that have played. So that's why I retired. I got to a point where I was like, you know what, never had any concussion issues or anything like that, but I had my daughter and I'm like, ready to walk away.
Was that it? I'm always curious about guys, CTE, the threat of it, being in the middle of the shoulders is a problem. I always say, take your head off and put it on the sidelines. It would be no issue, but it's there. You can't block, you can't tackle, you can't do anything without using your head. But that was it for you, huh, Corey?
No, that was it. I mean, I've been playing football since I was in 2nd grade. So all the hits to the head over the years, and they say it's not even the concussions, it's the constant hits. And I'm like, I probably had millions of them. So we never know. I feel good now. Knock on wood, I still do until the day I die. But, it's a very real thing that people are starting to realize. That's why you see people retiring. They get that second contract and then they're walking away. So, I'm all for making the game safer. People say, oh, it's soft and this, that, and the other. But when you look at guys that are suffering, you kind of understand it.
I'll give a good comparison. In NASCAR, when not AJ Foyt, Dale Earnhardt died, and everybody said, no, we can't have head restraints. We can't do this. We can't do any of that. Well, they did it. They put in head restraints. You don't see people dying in NASCAR. It didn't make those guys into soft anything, and it didn't change viewership. I hope there's a way to do that with football. Really?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's still a physical game any way you want to put it, but making it safer when a guy's going across the middle and you can't get a shot right at his head when he's not expecting it, I think that's better for the longevity of guys' lives, and it used to be a thing, oh, well, don't hit me low because I'm worried about my knees or my ankles. And now guys like, don't hit me up top right now. So I think it's all for the better, and I'm just hoping they continue. There's still a great product in football. I think everybody's tuning in. You look at all the rising stars from quarterbacks from Patrick Mahomes, Josh, all these guys. So the game is still a great product. So anybody that says it isn't, I don't know what you're watching.
You've also seen over the last several years these small little incremental rule changes to try and make the game a little bit safer. And guess what? It's as popular as ever, right? Exactly. So I know they're trying to do something with the punt return right now where I think there might be a day where you might not even see that at all. I think you just might see the ball at the 25-yard line.
They were talking about like the what is the league that The Rock had, the XFL. Have you ever watched it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I think I don't know if they started at the 25. I think they might even start at the 30 or something like that. But
they start 10 yards from where the ball carrier is, and then they start. So
right.
I don't know if they'll ever do that or whatever. But those are where most of those hits happen. I played with some guys that got knocked out cold on kickoff, like out cold. Like you had to get smelling salt, still wouldn't wake them up. So it's a dangerous game.
That's where you get blindsided and it's full speed hits. It makes you wonder. Again, as the rules change, what about a guy like Devin Hester? Maybe the greatest returner in the history of the game, might be almost legislated out of a position. And, I think about punters too. Everything changes. Games change. The NBA added the 3-point line. Nothing has to stay the same. So still 100 yards. Score is still the same. 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, and 6. Just a great system. Great for gambling, by the way, as if the NFL doesn't know that. All the other sports gambling places. But it is a good game. And I always say that if if it hadn't been invented, boys would eventually invent it anyway. I started out as a little kid. We'd play, maybe all you got to play slaughter the man with the ball in the schoolyard. Call it something else,
Kill the man with the ball, we called it.
Yeah, you just throw a ball. If you little kids throw the ball to somebody and just go and run and tackle him. He'd throw the ball away and somebody else get tackled. Just roughhousing. We like to roughhouse if we're dudes.
Football is a great game, and it teaches you a lot about life. I mean, think about it, right? You going through adversity, going through tough times, working together in a team, battling through things, perseverance. It teaches you life lessons. And if it weren't for football, like, honestly, it's taught me some of the greatest lessons I've learned, from playing the game of football. So I'm all for it. Just continue to make the game safer for people, so that way people don't have the same issues that, the NFL players before us had.
Good point.
This was BLEAV in Bears today, presented by BetOnline.ag. Use promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to get 50% off your first welcome bonus. Thank you so much for tuning into this show, listening to us on SiriusXM, Spotify, Apple, also checking us out on YouTube on Sports Talk Chicago or on the BLEAV Sports Network. My name is Joey Christopoulos. You can follow me at Joey Sports Guy. Corey, man, great to see you. West End Golf Course, everyone. They're doing some fantastic lessons all summer long. It is the place to be in the New Jersey area for the great golf simulator world. Corey, man, great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too, man. Another great pod. Rick, thanks for hopping on with us and talking some sports. Go NU always, and looking forward to the season, man.
Love the purple, man. And just a tip, golf might be the worst thing ever invented, because you always hit a good shot and you say, oh man, I can play this game.
Yeah, it's tough. It's the hardest game that you will ever play. It's something that you cannot perfect. Nope.
I'm going tomorrow. I'm going tomorrow to get my hopes up. So let's yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah. Just a little slice. Chicago Sun-Times, Rick Telander, man, such a pleasure, man. Truly, whether you believe it or not, you are a true legend, my friend. I've been reading you in my hands for years and years. You get that Chicago Sun-Times, flip that baby over and open up that page, because I've been a long reader and follower for a long time. Thank you so much for taking the time and being so generous with it. Be well, and we hope to have you back sometime.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Corey. I enjoyed it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for tuning in, you guys. We'll be back with more. Until then, be well, be safe. Please be good to each other. And remember, here on BLEAV in Bears, it's time to bear down, even in June.